and then now we have a system. Now we know, like, I've gotten more head catches than anybody, so I'm usually point guy. And
you're the first the point guy.
I'm the point
okay.
guy.
The taking the big risky first step.
Yes, although it could be argued that there's a similarly large risk for the tail guy, because the anaconda's defense is to take a giant projectile shit. And so the person that gets the tail is going to smell like anaconda for like at least a week.
Yeah, so it's the least pleasant. You're taking the most dangerous one. They have the least pleasant job. This is fascinating.
But what's really fascinating though is that because they're the apex predator, they're eating the fish, they're eating the birds, they're eating everything, and everything in this riparian ecosystem is absorbing the mercury that's coming off the gold mining in the region. And so anacondas can be indicative for us of how is mercury moving through this ecosystem. And this is a region where we've lost hundreds of thousands of acres to artisanal gold mining, where they use mercury to bind the gold. They cut the forest, burn the forest, and then they run water through the sand, and the sand particles have bits of gold in it, not chunks, but just little, almost microscopic flecks of gold. Mm-hmm. And then they use the mercury to bind that, and then they burn off the mercury, and that vapor goes up into the clouds, just like everything else. It's all connected down there, and then rains down into the rivers. And so the people in the region are having birth defects from the amount of mercury that's in the water. And so we were starting at one point when we were doing most of our anaconda research, we were learning things like these animals actually aren't just ambush predators, which is what most of the literature would tell you, is that anacondas are ambush predators. No, they actually go hunting. They'll go find clay licks and salt deposits, and they'll wait there. They'll actually pursue animals. And we were trying to take tissue samples to find out if anacondas could be used to study how mercury is moving through the ecosystem. And so that was really, it became, can we use these animals not only as ambassadors for wildlife, because everybody wants to see the anacondas, but also, what can we learn from studying this very, very little understood apex predator?
And one of the things you can learn is how mercury moves through the ecosystem, which can damage the ecosystem in all kinds of different ways.
Yeah, it's brutal, man. The gold mining that's happening down there is it's funny because we've been hearing a lot recently about like the cobalt mines in Africa, and it's like where we are in the Amazon. We were down there with ABC News, I want to say like a year and a half ago, with my friend Matt Gutman, who's the chief correspondent for ABC. And he wanted to see the Amazon fires. He wanted to see some wildlife. He wanted to see the areas that we're protecting. And then he goes, I want to see the gold mining areas. And I'd never gotten in so deep, but we met these Russian guys. You can't go with the Peruvian, they will kill you. Like our lawyer's father was assassinated for standing up to the gold miners. There was 2 Russian guys though, who had a legal mining concession somehow way out past the machine gun guarded limit of the Pampas, which is where they do all this gold mining. And we got in there and took footage of the desert that is forming in what used to be the headwaters of the Amazon rainforest. And it's like, there's a massive global scale ecological crime happening down there that you can see from space, from this unregulated gold mining. And the cops can't go there because they will be murdered. It's completely lawless.
What's the machine gun limit exactly?
It's the border of this area that they call the Pampas, which is where the rainforest has been cut and completely destroyed. And it looks like Mars. It's just sand. And inside of this area are gold miners. And we tried to get in there to film years ago. And there's just a lot of guys with machine guns who don't let that happen.
And what the Russian guys have
access to? The Russian guys had access somehow. They'd come down with a bit of money and they had a new system. Yeah. And actually what was interesting is while I was in there, they're very friendly and really, really 2 friendly gold miners. And they, one of them while I was there, he kind of tapped me on the shoulder. He was like, look at those guys. He was like, those guys over there? He goes, I just heard them say your name. And he goes, that's not a good thing. He goes, they know exactly who you are. He goes, I wouldn't keep posting to Instagram about gold mining in the Amazon. And I was like, okay, thanks for the warning. And then, in June, somebody pulled up beside me on a motorcycle and I got a more stern warning. But
they pay attention to the flow of information because they don't want the world to find out.
Oh, the last thing they want is to be shut down. But the gold miners are notorious for, just whacking people and throwing them in a pile of, gold mining leftovers. It's really like the Peruvian government has to get the military to go after them. Like the work we've done with gold miners, converting them into conservationists has all been like, I mean, I've seen the Peruvian Navy come down and literally blow up gold mining barges. And, you know, it's a war. It's a war being fought in the Amazon.
So it's possible to convert them into conservationists? What's that process like? Or is that like you say that in jest?
No, I say that in absolute sincerity. We went upriver, up the Malinowski River several years ago, and I think it was 2018, and everyone was like, "You are going to die. Like you will be shot and killed." And the reason we were able to do it with relative safety was that the gold miner that we were going with was the brother-in-law of one of my closest friends down there. Our expedition chef and one of the directors of Jungle Keepers. And they said, look, you can go, just keep a low profile. And so I went up with a photographer and we spent a week there, and dead animals everywhere, deforestation everywhere. I mean, the things that we saw were so horrible. And we're living with these gold miners that are, you know, they're getting their gold, they're burning off the mercury. I watched a guy smoking a cigarette, burning the mercury off of his gold with the vapor going straight into his face, with his child right there. I mean, unbelievable negligence of just sanity. And then towards the end of the week, the Peruvian Navy comes down the river and everyone starts scrambling. And I was like, I'm just going to sit here with my hands up because, you know, and they didn't even stop. They found the gold mining barge. You know, they have a floating thing in the river that just plumbs the bottom of the river, just sucks all the sediment up. And they stopped and they strapped a bunch of explosives to this motor, and good Lord, the sound of this explosion, and there was just hot metal raining down all over the place. And then they just went, a bunch of guys in fatigues, and they just kind of like looked at us like, peace. And I sat there with this gold miner and I went, now what? And he went, well, now I got to go get a new motor. And I went, why don't you just do something else? And he goes, what else is there? And I went, look what we do. And I sat there with my phone and I was like, see this? These are pretty tourists, and we feed them food and we show them tarantulas and macaws and things. And he looked at this and he went, wow. He goes, that looks like so much fun. And I went, it is so much fun. I said, we bring students to the jungle. He goes, so you're saying if I build you a lodge, you'll bring people? I said, yeah. And I came back a year later and he sat there with a chainsaw, a hand saw, and some nails. And he cut down like 17 palm trees and he built an ecotourism lodge.
So you give them another channel of survival,
yes,
of making money.
And that's what we've been doing through Jungle Keepers for loggers and for all kinds of extractors, is just saying, look, what do you make? You make $15 a day destroying the ancient trees of the jungle. What if we paid you $35 a day to have